Charity Dingle had always considered herself an architect of chaos, a master manipulator who could build empires of deception and live comfortably within their walls. But this one was different. It wasn't a structure she had built. It was a living thing, growing inside her, a parasite feeding on her sanity. The truth was a simple, devastating fact. The child she carried was hers and Ross Barton's, a ghost of a reckless past now made flesh. It was not, as the world believed, the surrogate embryo of Jacob Gallagher and Sarah Sugden, a precious gift she was merely nurturing. Even her husband, the man who slept beside her every night, Mackenzie Boyd, was a stranger to the truth beating just inches from his hand. The mess wasn't just real. It was biblical in its potential for destruction. Her days became a tightrope walk over a canyon of fire. Every smile to Jacob and Sarah was a lie that seared her lips. Every gentle touch from Mac was a betrayal that chilled her to the bone. She had convinced herself in the early days of panic that she could control this. She could carry the baby, hand it over, and walk away. The DNA, the inevitable questions, those were problems for a future she refused to envision. She lived in a self-imposed blindness, a desperate hope that if she didn't look down, she would never fall. Oh dear, naive Charity, with her head buried not in the clouds but in the sand of her own making. She had forgotten that science, like truth, is relentless. The approaching scan was a guillotine hanging over her neck, its shadow growing longer with each passing hour. The gel, the monitor, the dispassionate eyes of the sonographer, any of them could be the blade that would sever her world in two. The fear was a physical presence, a cold hand gripping her throat, making it hard to breathe. And then there was Chaz, dear, perceptive, and furiously loyal Chaz, who had been dragged into the outer circle of this hurricane of lies. Chaz didn't offer comfort. She offered a mirror, reflecting the ugly truth of Charity's choices. Her prodding questions were like salt in an open wound, her frustration a constant reminder of the collateral damage Charity was inflicting. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday, a day of relentless drizzle that mirrored the misery in her soul. She walked into her home, soaked and weary, seeking a moment of peace, only to be met with the sound of pure, unadulterated hope. Jacob and Sarah were on the sofa, a baby name book open between them, their faces glowing with an innocence that felt like an accusation. "I was just saying," Jacob mused, his voice filled with a dreamy excitement, "that I hope he gets my nose. Everyone says the boys always look like their fathers." Something inside Charity, a wire stretched too taut for too long, snapped. It was a soundless internal explosion of rage, panic, and self-loathing. The words tore from her throat before she could stop them, laced with a venom she hadn't known she possessed. "Stop it, just stop it!" The young couple flinched, their joyful bubble bursting into 1,000 sharp-edged pieces. Their faces, once bright with anticipation, were now masks of confusion and hurt. "The scan," Charity lied, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "It's been canceled. A machine is broken or something. It's off." The devastation that washed over them was immediate and absolute. It was as if she had stolen the sun from their sky. Without another word, Charity turned and fled, the image of their crushed expressions burning into her memory. She couldn't face them. She couldn't face Mac. She had to face the scan alone, to confront the tiny, flickering life that was the author of all her pain. But she was never truly alone. Chaz found her in the back room of the Woolpack, huddled in the dim light, her body trembling. Chaz, ever the anchor in Charity's storms, didn't need to speak. Her presence was enough to shatter the last of Charity's defenses. "I can't do this, Chaz," Charity whispered, the words a ragged, broken confession. "I'm going to walk in there and they're going to see it. They're going to see Ross's eyes, his everything, and it's all going to be over. My life with Mac, everything, over." Chaz's expression softened from frustration to a deep, resonant empathy. She understood, perhaps better than anyone, the prisons women could build for themselves out of love and fear. "Then you won't go alone," she declared, her voice firm. "I'm coming with you." The hospital was a sterile, impersonal hell. Every gurney that rolled past, every distant cry of a newborn, was a fresh torment. In the darkened room, the cold gel on her stomach made Charity gasp. She stared resolutely at a crack in the ceiling, refusing to look at the monitor, refusing to acknowledge the life within. But the sonographer was cheerful, oblivious. "And there's the heartbeat," she chirped. "Strong and steady." Chaz squeezed her hand, and against her will, Charity's eyes were drawn to the screen. And there it was. Not a secret, not a problem, but a person. A tiny, perfect silhouette, a fist waving in the watery darkness, a heart pulsing with a life that was inextricably, undeniably part of her. She saw the curve of its head, the shape of its spine, and in that silent, flickering image, a terrifying, treacherous thought took root in her heart. A thought more dangerous than any lie she had ever told. Mine. She felt a primal, possessive surge, a wave of feeling so powerful it stole her breath. What if she didn't give this baby away? What if she kept it? The thought was still echoing in her mind as she stumbled out of the room, her world tilting on its axis. She had jumped from the frying pan of exposure directly into the fire of a love she could never claim. And as she rounded the corner, her new, fragile fantasy collided with a brutal reality. There, standing by the reception desk, his face a thundercloud of confusion and worry, was Jacob. Their eyes met across the polished linoleum floor. The air crackled. His gaze dropped from her face to the appointment card still clutched in her hand, then back to her eyes. He didn't need to speak. The question was a scream in the silent corridor. The scan wasn't canceled. Charity's blood ran cold. The lie was exposed. The walls were crashing down. This was it. The end of the line. Her mind raced, a frantic scramble for another lie, another deflection, another escape. But there was none. She was trapped in the sterile light of the hospital, pinned by the gaze of the boy whose heart she was about to shatter. How in God's name would she ever talk her way out of this? While Charity's world was imploding in a quiet hospital corridor, another, more brutal drama was playing out on the fringes of the village. The story of April Windsor and Dylan Penders was a tragedy written in whispers and fearful glances. It was the story of how quickly the vibrant colors of youth could be leached away, leaving behind a stark, gray landscape of fear. The man holding the brush was Ray Walters. To the casual observer, Ray was just another face in the crowd. But to those who knew, to those he had ensnared, he was a smiling predator, a creature who had mastered the art of camouflage. He moved through the village like a disease, infecting its most vulnerable. And his latest vectors were two teenagers who should have been worrying about exams and first loves. He had pulled them into the dangerous, unforgiving world of drug dealing with the insidious ease of a spider spinning its web. It had started with Dylan, but Ray, with his sharp eye for weakness, soon saw the potential in April. Her loyalty, her quiet strength. He knew how to twist those virtues into tools for his own dark purposes. He bound them to him with a phantom debt, a number that shifted and grew with his every whim, ensuring their servitude was indefinite. They were trapped, forced to play a part in a criminal enterprise while their childhood dissolved around them. But the true horror, the twist that turned the knife, was the revelation that Ray was not the spider, but merely its most venomous leg. The architect of this entire operation, the mind in the center of the web, was his own mother, Celia Daniels, a woman whose grandmotherly facade concealed a heart of pure, cold ambition. This week, desperation had finally outweighed fear. April and Dylan had hatched a plan, a frantic, ill-conceived scheme to steal a portion of Ray's cash and run. They dreamed of a bus ticket to Wyware, a life free from the constant gnawing anxiety of Ray's next command. For a few fleeting hours, they had allowed themselves to hope. The hope died in a squalid lockup on the edge of town. Ray found them. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His disappointment was more terrifying than any rage. He stood in the doorway, a silhouette against the fading light, and the air grew thick and hard to breathe. He made them return the money, his movements slow and deliberate. Each second an exercise in psychological torture. "You know," he said, his voice a low, conversational purr that sent shivers down their spines. "I thought we had an understanding. I thought you knew how this works." He took a step closer to April, his eyes never leaving hers. "You have a lovely family, April, a real picture. Your brother. Leo, isn't it? Such a sweet boy. It would be a real shame if something unfortunate were to happen. A tragic accident. These things happen." The threat, veiled but unmistakable, hung in the air like poison gas. Leo. He had targeted her innocent, vulnerable brother. It was a masterstroke of cruelty, a chain forged around her heart that was stronger than any steel. The fight drained out of her, replaced by an icy, paralyzing terror. Later that evening, Ray's car slid to a stop outside her house. He had come to collect them. But as they approached, he held up a hand. "Just Dylan," he said, his voice flat and final. "Get in the car, Dylan." Dylan looked from Ray to April, his face pale with dread. April's voice was a desperate croak. "What? Where are you taking him? He's not going anywhere without me." Ray turned to her, and the mask of civility fell away, revealing the monster beneath. His face contorted into a snarl. "You are in no position to make demands," he hissed, his voice cracking like a whip. "Dylan's safety now depends entirely on you. Tomorrow you will do exactly as you are told. You will follow my client's instructions to the letter. If you want to see your friend again unharmed, you will not fail. Do you understand me?" She could only nod, tears streaming down her face as she watched the car's red taillights disappear into the night, swallowing Dylan whole. She was alone, more trapped than ever before, with an unknown task looming and the weight of her friend's life on her shoulders. As Ray's cancer spread through the village, a different kind of murmur began to circulate among the long-time residents, a whisper of a name not spoken with reverence for years. It started on a local Facebook fan page, a digital cry of frustration from a viewer driven mad by Ray's unchecked villainy. Someone just deal with him already. Then a flicker of an old flame. Will Scott Windsor come back to sort him out? The suggestion caught fire. It would be great if Scott returned. He's got history with so many characters. Scott Windsor. The name was a relic, a ghost from a past era of Emmerdale. April's uncle. The brother of her late mother, Donna Windsor. A man of formidable reputation, last seen in the village in 2007, but never truly forgotten. His name was a legend, a symbol of a time when problems were solved not with quiet desperation, but with righteous fury. He was the protector April never knew she had, a sleeping giant whose name alone was enough to ignite a spark of hope in the suffocating darkness. The fans were speculating. But in a village built on impossible returns and dramatic reckonings, their speculation felt like a prophecy. They were unknowingly calling a ghost back from the past, summoning a protector to face the serpent who was devouring their children. The question was no longer if someone would stop Ray, but when Scott Windsor would finally come home to do it. The tendrils of Ray's darkness had not yet reached Woodbine Cottage, but a different kind of poison was seeping through the floorboards. Aaron Dingle was a man accustomed to battles, a warrior forged in the fires of a brutal past. But the latest assault had come from a direction he never anticipated, wielding a weapon he thought was buried forever. The conflict was over his ex-husband, Robert Sugden, the great epic love of his life, a story now twisted into a grotesque new shape. And the new villain in this story was Kev Townsend. Kev was Robert's prison shadow, an ex-con who had latched onto him behind bars and followed him back into the world. The tension had been simmering for weeks, culminating in a public display of affection between Aaron and Robert at the Woolpack that had sent Kev into a quiet, simmering rage. But the true declaration of war had been more intimate and infinitely more cruel. Kev had cornered Aaron and, in a low, menacing voice, had referenced Aaron's childhood sexual abuse, a secret of profound pain, a vulnerability known only to his most trusted confidants. Robert must have told him. The betrayal was a physical blow, knocking the air from Aaron's lungs. The ultimate violation came when Aaron returned home to find the serpent in his sanctuary. Kev was there, in his flat, an avatar of smiling menace who made it chillingly clear. Interfere with his and Robert's relationship again, and he would not hesitate to kill him. "I don't make idle threats," Kev had promised, his eyes devoid of any emotion. The aftermath of that encounter left Aaron hollowed out, a ghost in his own home. It was Mackenzie Boyd who found him, his usual swagger and easy grin replaced by a sharp, concerned frown. Mac had a keen eye for pain, and he could see that his friend was drowning. He pushed, gently at first, then with the firm insistence of a true ally, until the story spilled out of Aaron, the confrontation, the cruel words, the death threat. Mac's blood ran cold. He was a man who lived by a simple, fierce code of loyalty. You don't mess with his people. Seeing Aaron, one of the strongest men he knew, so utterly crushed, ignited a protective fury in Mac's soul. The love story of Robron, once a saga that captivated the village, now seemed like a toxic myth, a story that needed to end before it consumed Aaron completely. Without a second thought, Mac headed for Woodbine Cottage. He was going to confront the monster himself. He found Kev in the kitchen. The scene was so surreally domestic it was terrifying. Kev Townsend, the violent criminal who had threatened to murder his friend, was wearing a floral pinny, a dusting of flour on his nose, and was cheerfully whipping the batter for a lemon drizzle cake. The sweet, cloying scent of sugar and citrus filled the air, a grotesque counterpoint to the chilling aura of violence that radiated from the man. "Can I help you?" Kev asked, his voice as smooth as the batter he was folding. Mac dispensed with the pleasantries. "I'm Mackenzie," he said, stepping into the kitchen. "A friend of Aaron's. You and I need to have a chat." Kev didn't stop his baking. He scraped the bowl with methodical precision, his movements calm and unnerving. He listened as Mac laid it out, his tone low and dangerous. When Mac finished, Kev looked up, a thin, humorless smile playing on his lips. "He sent you? His little bodyguard?" He wiped his hands on his apron and took a step closer to Mac, invading his personal space. The smell of lemons was suddenly suffocating. Kev's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Let me give you some free advice. Some people's business is best left alone. You seem like a man who values his appearance. You've got those pretty looks. It would be a shame if they got rearranged. Stay out of it. This is between me, my man, and his past. It has nothing to do with you." The threat was unmistakable, delivered with the casual menace of a man who had broken others for less. Max stared into his cold, dead eyes and saw nothing but a void. This wasn't just a thug. This was a psychopath. Later, Aaron, learning of the confrontation, tried to shut it down. "It's over, Mac. I told him I don't love Robert anymore," he said, the words sounding hollow even to himself. He relayed that Robert apparently felt the same, that their chapter was closed. But Mac wasn't buying it. He saw the truth in his friend's haunted eyes. "You don't believe that, and neither do I," Mac countered, his mind racing. "This isn't about love. Think about it. Robert and him, they were locked up together. Two desperate guys in a cage. Maybe it started as comfort, a way to survive. But for a guy like Kev, possession is everything. He doesn't love Robert. He owns him, and he's not going to let his property go." He looked away, a new, dangerous resolve hardening in his eyes. He had called Kev a psycho cake baker, a joke to mask the severity of the situation. But he knew this was no laughing matter. This wasn't just a feud over a past love, this was a rescue mission. He had seen the monster up close, smelled the cloying sweetness of his particular brand of evil. Crossing paths with Kev Townsend wasn't a mistake. It was a declaration of war, and Mackenzie Boyd had no intention of backing down. The question was no longer if he would regret it, but how much damage he was willing to inflict to win. The fragile silence of Emmerdale is about to be torn apart. The whispers are becoming screams, and the secrets are crawling out of the shadows, hungry for the light. What you have read is merely the prologue to the reckoning. Here is what happens next. The hospital corridor becomes a courtroom. Jacob, his face pale with a dawning, sickening understanding, takes a step toward Charity. The hurt in his eyes is quickly being replaced by a cold anger. "The scan wasn't canceled," he states, his voice trembling but firm. "It is not a question. You lied to us. To me and Sarah. Why? Why would you lie about that, Charity?" Charity opens her mouth, but only air comes out. Her mind is a maelstrom of panic. For the first time in her life, she is utterly, completely cornered. She has no play, no angle, no escape route. Just as the silence becomes unbearable, a new figure appears at the end of the hall. It's Mac. He'd been trying to call her, a knot of unease tightening in his stomach after her strange outburst at home. Seeing her here, seeing the look on Jacob's face, the knot becomes a fist of ice. "What's going on?" Mac asks, his eyes darting between his distraught wife and the furious young man. "Jacob, what is it?" Jacob turns his accusing gaze on Mac, then back to Charity, the pieces of an impossible puzzle clicking into place in his mind. The secrecy, the mood swings, the fierce, almost desperate way Charity has been guarding this pregnancy. And now, a secret scan. "She lied, Mac," Jacob says, his voice raw. "She told us the scan was canceled, but she's here. She went alone. Why would she do that? Why would she hide it from us? Unless," he falters, the horrific thought too monstrous to articulate fully. "Unless there's something she doesn't want us to see." Mac turns to Charity, his expression shifting from confusion to a deep, probing concern. He sees the sheer terror in her eyes, the guilt that she can no longer conceal. He takes her hands, and they are like ice. He looks deep into her eyes, searching for the woman he married, for the truth she is so desperately hiding. He asks the question that will detonate all of their lives, the one question she cannot possibly answer without incinerating her entire world. "Charity," he says, his voice dangerously quiet. "Look at me. What is going on? Whose baby is it?" The corridor shrinks, the air vanishes. The final thread has been pulled. The unraveling begins now. April is a ghost. She moves through the village on autopilot, the weight of Ray's threat crushing her. Dylan is gone, a hostage to her obedience. Her phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. It's her orders. The message is cryptic, chillingly simple. It's a location the center of the village, by the war memorial, and a time. Midnight. And a package she must pick up from a parked car and deliver to a client waiting in the shadows of the Woolpack. She is to be a drug mule in plain sight, in the heart of her own home. It's a test of her nerve, a display of Ray's absolute power. As midnight approaches, a thick fog rolls into the valley, blanketing the village in an eerie shroud. Trembling, April makes her way to the memorial. The streets are deserted. The village is asleep, unaware of the nightmare playing out in its heart. She sees the car, its engine off, its windows dark. As she reaches for the handle of the back door, a different set of headlights cut through the fog, sweeping across the square and pinning her in their glare. An old, powerful-looking Land Rover, the kind that belongs to the land, grinds to a halt a few feet away. The driver's door opens. A figure emerges, tall and broad-shouldered. A man who moves with a heavy, purposeful confidence. His face is obscured by shadow, but his presence fills the empty square. He takes a slow step towards her, his boots crunching softly on the gravel. April freezes, her heart hammering against her ribs, convinced it's one of Ray's men, that she has already failed. The man stops. His voice is a low, gravelly rumble, a voice she has never heard before, but that resonates with a strange, forgotten familiarity. "It's a bit late to be out by yourself," he says, his tone not unkind. He takes another step, and the light from a distant street lamp catches the hard lines of his face. "You must be April. You've got your mother's eyes." April can only stare, speechless. "I heard you might be in some trouble," the man continues, his gaze intense, seeming to see right through her fear to the truth beneath. "It's a good thing I came back when I did. You looking for your uncle, April? It's him. The ghost. The legend. Scott Windsor has come home, and hell has come with him." Mackenzie cannot shake the image of Kev in the kitchen. The flour, the apron, the cold, dead eyes. This is not a man you can intimidate with threats. This is a man you must dismantle piece by piece. He knows he can't win a physical fight with a man like that, not without dire consequences. So he will fight a different way. He will become a detective. He spends the night digging, not in the dirt, but in the digital underworld. He makes a single phone call to a shadowy contact from his own less-than-perfect past in Glasgow, a man who knows how to find people and, more importantly, how to find their secrets. "I need everything you can find on a man named Kev Townsend," Max says, his voice low and urgent. "He did time in HMP Houghton. Was released a few months back. I need his weakness. Everyone has one." Hours later, an encrypted file arrives on his laptop. It's a collection of prison reports, visitor logs, and censored inmate correspondence. Max scrolls through pages of mundane data until he finds it. a name. A recurring visitor to Kev during his last year inside, a visitor who wasn't Robert. A name connected to Kev's life before prison, a life he has meticulously erased. And with that name, a photograph. The next day, Max sits in his car parked across the street from Woodbine Cottage. He watches as Kev leaves the house, whistling cheerfully as he heads towards the shop. Mac picks up his phone. He has found Kev's secret. He has found the one person in the world that the psycho cake baker is afraid of. He has found the lever that will break him. He isn't just planning to warn Kev off. He's planning to utterly destroy him, to burn his life to the ground to protect the people he loves. The feud has just begun, and Mackenzie Boyd is about to prove that he is far more dangerous than anyone ever suspected.